Previously on Atop the Fourth Wall. So let's dig into Exiles, number 1 to 61, and introduce you to the Marvel Multiverse.
Look, I don't understand, okay? How am I supposed to know what the next History of Power Rangers episode is if I don't ask Linkara?
You could check his website where he posts updates.
He has a website?
Well, yeah, it's in the ending credits of his episodes.
There are ending credits? And there are jokes and notes at the end of it too? If only I knew.
So what is it we're in the middle of right now?
It's called a Previously On segment. Linkara usually does them for 2-part episodes, but it's been a while since the last one.
But does it contain hints for the storyline? Why is the music from Star Trek II playing?
Haven't you been paying attention? It's a joke he's been doing since the beginning of the show. As for the Star Trek II music, isn't it obvious? It's really dramatic.
Yeah, but wait, who are we all? We've never been on this show before. I haven't even been in my own show.
It's in the ending credits of his episodes.
There are end credits?
Look, we're making too much sense for a Previously On segment. Throw in some random over-the-top dramatic things, now!
Hello, my beautiful... Stop that yelling at once. Look, you don't know me yet, but you've sent me from your future to give you a warning to pass on to Linkara.
I don't believe it. According to this geological survey, the moon is an octagon.
Get me the president of Norway! Get me the president of Venezuela! Mr. President? Mr. President? I'm a negotiator.
Dr. Evil here, kids! Here I am, gonna, inject stuff into YouTubers!
Right, it was something to do with a cyber mousepad or a Pokemon that doesn't exist, you know? I really should have been paying more attention in hindsight.
Damn it! If only there was something we could do to support Linkara! Like, if he had a new t-shirt or something you could pre-order in the video description!
There's stuff in the video description?
But wait, we could also support his Patreon and get him to a milestone level where he'll do other History of videos like... Masked Rider, Mystic Knights of Tir Na Nog,
VR Troopers, Superhuman Cybernized Cyber Squad,
Kamen Rider Dragon Knight, Big Bad Beetleborgs, Tattooed Teenage Alien Fighters from Beverly Hills. Other shows that have ridiculous names like that.
You know what? Forget this whole thing. This is turning into just one big commercial. Everybody start doing random shenanigans or something before people click off the video.
Well, this is about the last time you're gonna see me again. I'm gone for another few months. See ya.
On my way to be an evil doctor, gonna perform more lobotomies.
Eduardo!
And now, the conclusion.
Welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Linkara's gonna teach you all a lesson you won't learn. Brodsky, you're not the smartest. Life out, you're not an artist. Anyone who's had a bad comic published, it could be your turn. Linkara, he's a man punch, wears a birdie hat. Linkara, he has a magic gun. Where'd he purchase that? Linkara, coins, robots, Amazon and trucks. Linkara, this comic sucks. Linkara.
Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. We continue our retrospective of Exiles. When we last left our heroes, they had figured out a way to teleport to the location of the Time Broker, the being who claimed to simply be a representation of their collective consciousness. And for someone who didn't really exist, he sure had a swanky crystal palace that they ended up in. They had also been joined by Holocaust, the son of Apocalypse, because when your name already means the end of the world, it kind of limits what you can name your kid. I would have gone with Timmy, just for the confused looks on people's faces. So let's dig into the rest of Exiles and see what new revelations and new characters we'll get in the latter half of it all. Our heroes compare notes, with Namra saying that she thinks she's been here before, that it resembles where the Time Broker recruited her. Holocaust, of course, was just teleported in front of the others and given the speech, but Sabretooth says he and Weapon X were dumped in the middle of an ocean, with the Time Broker showing up in a boat with some beer for their recruitment speech. Here, have a brewski while I tell you about how your personal timeline has been undone and you need to kill people, bro. The group explores the place, discovering monitors that observe various parallel universes, doorways leading to places like the desert the Exiles were first recruited, but most importantly, they discover a hallway full of bodies. The bodies of fallen Exiles and Weapon X members, including Thunderbird, Sunfire, and this dude who had a buzzsaw-shaped Captain America shield stuck in his stomach. I mean, for crying out loud, they just left that in there! I don't like the Time Broker's healthcare plan. They also discover a hole in the wall where a body should be, as well as Beak and Heather, who of course were not dead when they last met. At first they want to break them out, but realize they may be on some form of life support that could be interrupted if they're removed. They're soon not alone though, as a 2-foot-tall bug creature suddenly walks out to examine the hallway. The group jumps it, thinking it's the Time Broker, but the creature says he doesn't understand anything about what they're talking about, saying it's just a member of the worker caste, and it can take them to its leader. It brings them to the control center, where they teleport inside of the locked door to find more bugs, these ones resembling grasshoppers. The bugs apologize upon seeing them, saying they never meant any harm and only wanted to help. Blink demands to see the Time Broker, but a new figure emerges, saying there isn't a Time Broker. That figure is Hyperion, the same one they barely managed to defeat from Weapon X. He's alive and says that he's running things around here now, planning for every Earth in the multiverse to call him God. Holocaust attacks, but Hyperion is too powerful even for him. He says he deliberately put Holocaust on the team to make things tougher for the Exiles, but he just ended up working with them instead. And since Holocaust is living energy, Hyperion smashes his containment bubble and snorts the energy of Holocaust into him. I see the Ultimate Warrior was teaching people how to use Skronk as a superpower. The Exiles run like hell, Hyperion in pursuit, while one of the grasshoppers tells the worker bug from before that he has to free the one who can save the multiverse from Hyperion. The group head for the desert environment, figuring that a nice big open space with room to maneuver would be good while they thought of a plan. Hyperion catches up with them and, since he hasn't had anyone to talk to in quite a while who wasn't an insect, decides to explain what the hell is going on. The reason for the Hall of Bodies is because anything out of place in another dimension could cause residual harm to a world that's been fixed. So they pull the bodies or remains out and put them in the wall, possibly for sentimentality or guilt over having gotten them killed. Hyperion, however, isn't like anyone else they'd recruited. Like Superman, his body is essentially a huge solar battery, and the Crystal Palace puts out a lot of solar energy, so over time his body regenerated with all the pieces so close together. He broke out of the wall and took over, learning what the deal is with this place, called the Panopticon, or just Crystal Palace. The bugs didn't build it. They're interdimensional explorers who discovered this outside of space and time. They decided to study it and used it to launch expeditions into other realities for mapping purposes, but they made a mistake. They're not entirely sure how they did it, but they did something that caused all the damage to alternate realities that the Exiles have been fixing. The bugs themselves were incapable of doing the violent, nasty work necessary for the task, but they had equipment that could tell them what could solve it, and who could solve it. The Exiles are not unstuck in time. They could go home whenever. It's just the bugs needed specific people for specific tasks and cooked up the story about time itself recruiting them and that the Time Broker was their collective consciousness. My only problem with this is, again, the collective consciousness thing. The rest of the lie would have worked fine, but why was that more plausible than saying they were some benevolent power helping them out? I mean, they wouldn't even have to admit that they had caused the damage the Exiles were fixing. Just explain that they are explorers and found out about the breaks in time and thought to help them fix it. Otherwise, as I mentioned a lot last time, you have this story about a figment of their own imagination handing them a piece of technology that knew all and saw all. And yeah, they'd still question the story about them being benevolent, but at least there'd be slightly less suspicion about it. Hell, given the hologram technology used to create the Time Broker, they could have come up with anything else to be the one telling them all this. A more familiar face or something. But whatever, that's just my thoughts on it. We later learn that Hyperion's been toying with the team for a while. He was the one who sent them to the magic world, hoping that their erased memories would get them killed. He was the one who allowed Tanorak to be in charge, again assuming they'd be killed. When that failed, he recruited Sabretooth to try to make Blink a less effective leader, since she tends to defer to him because of their father-daughter relationship, and ordered them to kill Mimic. Again, failed. Hyperion gives them a chance to join him, but of course they all refuse. Meanwhile, the worker cast bug goes to the one who can save the multiverse, letting him out of the wall. Beak. Behold our savior, everyone! The one whom Magneto once described best.
X-Chicken.
After all this is explained to Beak, he shares the same sentiment. How the hell is he supposed to save it? But indeed, the predictive algorithms that the bugs used said that the Panopticon was going to encounter some kind of catastrophe, and that the way to save them would be Beak. Hence why he was put on the team. But the thing about Beak, as he points out, is that he's not super strong, he doesn't have heat vision, or is super smart or anything. No, Beak's advantage is that he's really good at making friends. And thus the bugs show him how to operate the dimensional transporters, and he recruits some friends. 2 other versions of Hyperion who aren't megalomaniacal assholes. With the help of the other 2 Hyperions, they finally manage to knock the evil one unconscious and drag him into the teleporter room, sending him back to the dead world he came from and ensuring he can't hurt anyone else ever again. The other 2 Hyperions were happy to help, though they admit they think the technology of the place has too much potential for misuse, wanting to take charge themselves, but they're happily willing to give up control to Beak, since he's just such a wise, helpful guy who helped save even their realities from the evil Hyperion. He gladly says he'll stick around to help out, but of course he's lying, so after they send the 2 home, he wants to get medical help for the others, and then wants to go home to his wife and kids. And after saving all of reality, yeah, he's probably earned that. So now the Exiles know the truth behind their operations, but while they were victorious, they were not unscarred. Namoro was killed in the battle while Morph and Mimic were severely injured. Most of issue 66 is the aftermath of everything that happened, and bringing Heather out of the wall, since, well, she's not dead or anything, and they need her help with the others. Mimic is alive, but his Colossus form is basically shredded. If he goes out of that form, the injuries will become flesh and blood, and, well, he'll die. They pull a Stephen Strange out of a universe where he became a superhero physician instead of Sorcerer Supreme to help, but unfortunately he's not able to do much. Mimic needs to absorb a healing factor to repair the damage, and his body refuses to grab Sabretooth's, possibly because his physiology is too similar to Wolverine, of whom he has already grabbed the claws from. They put him inside the Crystal Palace walls to keep him in suspended animation until they can come up with a better plan. They also debate about what to do with the Crystal Palace. They're still pretty pissed at the bugs for kidnapping them and forcing them into this life, but the job's not done yet, and they don't know what would happen to the multiverse if they destroyed this place or forced the bugs to leave. Morph recovers, but insists their real first priority is burying the dead and healing up their other members, taking Sunfire back to the world with the techno-organic virus so she can be buried by Spider-Woman. They do have a plan to help Mimic, though. There's a world where Kurt Connors' regenerative formula that transformed him into the Lizard actually worked properly and healed him, so they go to get some of the serum. Unfortunately, the world he lives on doesn't have superheroes, but instead just giant monsters that he and his team have to combat. Like Krakoa, the island that walks like a man! Although that's less impressive when you realize he still trips and falls like a man too. The giant monsters in this world are a natural part of the Earth's biosphere. Pathogenic monsters exist like a cancer on the environment and need to be fought, whereas antigenic ones are part of Earth's natural immune system, combating them. Connor's team exists to try to minimize the damage caused by the kaijus fighting each other, or whatever man-made thing they've come to destroy. With Blink's help, acting as a fairy sidekick to the monster Fin Fang Foom, they get Krakoa and the dragon to fight one another. Meanwhile, back in the Crystal Palace, well, crap goes down. Much like how Hyperion regenerated himself, the Deadpool that Sabretooth killed 50 issues ago by snapping his neck regenerates. Realizing that he has a healing factor Mimic could use, they free him, But people often forget that Deadpool is not a good guy, so when he hears about what's going on, he kills Doctor Strange and gets Heather to try to revive other members of Weapon X so they can have fun with the Crystal Palace's equipment. Beak has the bugs revive Mimic, though he's unconscious at first, needing some time to copy Deadpool's healing factor. Deadpool, though, has Heather revive the female Hulk, last seen being pulled into the negative zone, since she's the only one he knew who was still there. Mimic and Deadpool fight, with Deadpool hoping Hulk will help him, but she just wants to go home, and since she's a judge, she's the only one with legal authority to do anything about Deadpool's murder of Doctor Strange, bashing Deadpool to death. Gotta love the sound effect for the page, too. Hulk splat. Anyway, they send her home, and that leads us into the next big arc of Exiles, beginning with their tie-in to Marvel's crossover event, House of M. Long story short, the Scarlet Witch was convinced to alter the world so that mutants were the dominant force in the world. The end result of this was that the Scarlet Witch reversed it with the phrase, "No more mutants," reducing the mutant population to about 200 people. For about 6 years, which in terms of having a lasting impact on comic storytelling means it might as well have been status quo for 50 years. They want to get Beak home, but unaware of the changes the Scarlet Witch made to the 616 universe, and yes, I know some pronounce it 616, but 616 sounds better to me, and it makes no real difference. The team are unable to get a clear look at it, so once they teleport in, they have to find a way to get Beak reunited with his family. But his wife doesn't know him in the revised universe, but that's the least of their problems. Yes, only in superhero comics is altered timeline that results in the unmaking of several children not the worst thing that could be happening to the main characters. In the House of M timeline, the mutant serial killer Proteus is still alive. Proteus was the son of X-Men ally Moira McTaggart, an energy being that could possess people, but burned out their bodies upon using them. If that wasn't bad enough, he also had reality warping powers that would make him dangerous enough without the body snatching. His life made him a bit unhinged, and it's no different here. He's powerful enough that he manages to steal the Talus, accessing the Panopticon's database on alternate realities, and uses it to teleport to other universes. But what's even worse for the team? He possesses Mimic, which effectively destroys his mind and replaces it with Proteus. Mimic is dead. Some commenters were turned off by Exiles because they felt it was wrong that they could so casually murder their team members. I disagree. It's not like they kill off members every mission, and there are consequences for their deaths. Death in a story should have meaning, have an effect on those around them. Even 2 years after Sunfire died, it was still having an effect on Morph. Now don't get me wrong, there are still problematic elements involved in these deaths. It's not like every character is getting some wonderful blaze of glory ending, but with death and resurrection so common in superhero books, it's nice to have a series where we are genuinely connected to the characters and fearful of their fates. Now that shouldn't be the only thing we're afraid of for them. If the only way to create tension is to fear that the characters will be killed, then it's poor writing. But all these characters have had other motivations, other concerns and hardships motivating them and influencing them. Exiles, despite some connections to the main Marvel universe, still operates fairly independently of it, so it can be viewed mostly in isolation as a well-written saga that has a pretty damn long run with very few instances of it being bad or mediocre. Hell, I wouldn't even call anything we've had so far actually bad. Although rest assured, the book has a way to go. Anyway, with Proteus now able to hop universes freely, we begin a long storyline for the book. The World Tour, wherein the Exiles hop to various Marvel lines within their stable that don't get as much attention. House of M was only the first part of that, and yeah, it was a line. Even after the storyline concluded, for some reason they kept publishing material about it. I don't know how much actual interest there was in it, but yeah, it was a thing. Next up in the World Tour is the New Universe. The New Universe was a line Marvel made in honor of their 25th anniversary in 1986. Yes, no better way to celebrate your birthday than by making something completely divorced from it. I kid, of course. New Universe was a pretty ambitious, interesting idea that sadly got screwed over, as is often the case. Since this was the 80s, comics were all about trying to be more realistic, so this universe would be identical to the real world until 1986, when an occurrence called the White Event gave superpowers to 2 out of every million people. This world, ideally, would have no magic or supernatural or otherworldly elements except for those created by the White Event. A world where superheroes were only just beginning to emerge. Unfortunately, because of cost-cutting issues from Marvel's higher-ups, the budget for the new universe line was slashed considerably, and they couldn't hire the top-tier talent they wanted to work on it, instead getting new, untested talent. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but when you're trying to create an entire universe from scratch, you kinda want some experienced people guiding things until the new people could carry it on their own. After some attempts at relaunching the line, it eventually ended in 1989, with a few scattered bits of it referenced, retconned, or new stories told since then in the last several years. But before we see what Proteus does there, an epilogue for Beak, who was left back home again with his wife after the Scarlet Witch's No More Mutants. Thankfully, he and his wife are alive again, but without their mutations. Half their kids are also regular humans again, but doesn't really matter. The important thing here is that the dude who helped save the multiverse got a happy ending. Well, I mean, except for that nose, but hey, he got his wife and kids back, so I think that's a worthy sacrifice. Proteus's goal is to obtain a body that won't burn out. He's here for Starbrand, a character who wields a massive amount of power, but during all the fighting, he instead ends up in a character named Justice, who has the ability to summon up psionic weapons. Heather also contacts Mojo, offering up visuals of other universes for his interdimensional TV station. As I have to keep saying, comic books. In exchange for Longshot, the longtime enemy of Mojo, whose memory has been wiped by Mojo. Longshot has the ability to defy probability, or in other words, luck powers. The hope is that his own ability to warp reality to his favor will be able to counter Proteus's own reality warping. It works when their attempt to confront him on a dreamscape with another new universe character, Nightmask, fails. Unfortunately, he just decides to cut his losses and flee to another universe. Aw, you mean Proteus didn't get to encounter Kickers Incorporated, the book about a team of football players who get superpowers? Yes, I will review this someday. Next up in the World Tour is 2099. Yeah, I should explain something. Despite them going to stuff like 2099 and the new universe and all that, they're actually alternate versions of those realities. Split timelines that occur once Proteus enters and creates a divergence in that world's natural course. He's still on the lookout for a new body as he arrives at an Alchemax facility. So, this is 2099, is it? Looks like a crap episode of Doctor Who. Considering this was made in 2006, I was gonna ask if he meant classic series or new series, but let's face it, either way, the future tended to look pretty cheap. Proteus is still looking for a new body to sustain him. My god, what will it mean for the fight against pollution if he takes over Ravage? Actually, he's on the lookout for Hulk 2099, while our heroes devise another way of combating him. Proteus's weakness is metal. It's one of those odd occurrences where the Doctor Who reference is kind of hilarious, since Proteus is a foe who can be stopped with bullets. Mind you, that tends to kill the host body, so it's not exactly a great solution, but there you go. Instead, our heroes have metallic implants put into their brains to try to protect them from possession, with the exception of Morph, since his body is basically Play-Doh, so they just kind of shove a piece of metal in his head and hold it there, like a suppository for his brain. The group meets up with Spider-Man 2099 and sadly arrive too late to stop him from taking over the future Hulk. However, Proteus retains the memories of everyone he possesses, and that's getting in the way for him, because he feels Mimic's overwhelming love for Blink, and it's affecting him. Before they can take advantage of that, though, Hulk unmasks Spidey 2099 to the entire world. A bunch of the corporations of the 2099 world try to recruit Proteus to work for them for his knowledge of reality manipulation and dimensional travel, including Doom 2099, but Spidey convinces him that all these people will just try to use him, using his own backstory of being a forced addict as an example of them using people. Proteus decides to leave for another universe, and Spidey asks to come with the Exiles, both because of his exposed identity and because he feels responsible for sending him to the next world. So, Spidey 2099 is now a member of the Exiles. Kleenex! Third on the World Tour is Squadron Supreme. I've talked about it before, even mentioned it last time. Basically, it's the DC universe, but made by Marvel, using proxies of DC characters that allowed them to have crossovers with DC without all the actual legal issues of doing crossovers with DC. Before you think that's a bit cheeky of Marvel, I should note that DC actually has their own too, the Champions of Angor. It's just they're not used as often, or if they are, DC just uses the villains of Angor, called the Extremists, so that's a thing too. Proteus arrives and aids the Squadron in defeating forces of the world government that had been sent to arrest all of them. Long story, corrupt government, etc. This Hyperion is one of the two who aided the Exiles against the villainous Hyperion, so it takes a bit of time to establish trust, especially when they learn that Beak isn't supervising them like they wanted. However, before Proteus can try to take over Hyperion, he dimension jumps again. The Squadron Supreme think the Exiles will need help, so Zarda, aka Power Princess, the Wonder Woman equivalent, volunteers for the job. Next up on the world tour is another alternate future, from a Hulk storyline called Future Imperfect. After a couple of nuclear wars, the Earth is mostly devastated, and the only civilization left is run by a future tyrannical version of the Hulk known as the Maestro. And really, the only shocking thing about that to me is that the Hulk can grow a beard. Who knew? Professional sidekick Rick Jones has met up with Proteus, thinking he's just an alternate reality version of the Hulk, and recruits him to try to take out Maestro. Power Princess takes command of the Exiles, Blink surrendering leadership because of how they failed to take down Proteus, and because of the loss of Mimic. Zarda already proves pretty smart in her planning, deciding instead to teleport to the Maestro and explain the whole thing to him. He might be a tyrant, but he's not an idiot, and realizes the threat Proteus represents. Unfortunately, during the fight, they accidentally stab the Maestro, which pisses him off something royal, and they end up being distracted fighting him. During the fight, Proteus punches Morph hard enough for the metal piece in his head to get shoved out, allowing Proteus to possess Morph. Because of Morph's nature, his body doesn't start deteriorating, and he's only too happy to be in a body that he can constantly change the appearance of. He teleports away, bringing us to our final stop of the world tour, Earth 616. Well, not exactly. He's ending up on the Heroes Reborn Earth. To make a long story short, too late! This was the world created when Marvel let Rob Liefeld and Jim Lee have control over the Avengers, Fantastic Four, Captain America, and Iron Man. This is another occasion where I highly recommend checking out SF Debris' Rise and Fall of the Comics Empire, where he gets into some of the stuff related to it, including some really shady things Liefeld did. But in story, the Fantastic Four and Avengers were supposedly killed while fighting a supervillain who emerged from the minds of Magneto and Professor Xavier. Yes, I will somehow review this idiocy someday, okay? In reality, they were sent to a pocket universe, which in turn was yanked out of that pocket universe and placed in the solar system as a counter-Earth, one exactly like ours but on the complete opposite side of the sun, masking us from seeing it. Like alternate universes, it is a common trope of science fiction stories, the other Earth on the opposite side of the sun thing. The difference is that there's enough proven science to say the idea of a counter-Earth is absolute bullcrap. I mean, I know this is a superhero universe featuring an evolved human who can become pure energy, who can warp reality to his whim while possessing the body of a shapeshifter from another dimension, but that's friggin' unbelievable! Dear Lord, I'm a dork. Anywho, Blink takes command of the Exiles again and has a plan to deal with Proteus once and for all. Zarda and Spider-Man retrieve a device from the Squadron Supreme Earth, a mind-altering one used in theirs. They manage to trick him into putting it on. Blink reprogrammed it. Proteus is still there, but his mind can only access Morph's memories. It's a tricky situation. They don't want to accidentally awaken Proteus, but it's awkward for them because as far as all the rest of them know, he is still Proteus. Still, the World Tour helps show the team that they had a lot of work ahead of them. A bunch of worlds got screwed up by Proteus, and there were still plenty that needed help that the Exiles weren't around to do anything about. So they decide to stay on as a team, including Power Princess, Spider-Man, and Longshot. Issue 83, despite some action bits, is another Aftermath issue. In the wake of the World Tour, they free everyone else from the walls of the Crystal Palace, save for Thunderbird, whom they still hope to heal, and send the living home and the dead back to their worlds with notes saying that they died honorably and for a good cause. One thing that's never really explained is why the bugs put them into the halls like that. After all, what was stopping the bugs from doing what they said and sending people home? Blink I can understand. She ended up solving the original mission of the Exiles and Weapon X by getting David Richards killed, even if it was years after it was supposed to happen. But if the bugs had the ability to put people back when their jobs were done, why not do it? Anyway, issue 84 follows up on that a bit. The Exiles all decide to check in on their own realities before getting back to their missions, but the bugs are pissed that after the World Tour and constantly focusing on their own lives, after the bugs screwed up their lives, they're not immediately hopping back into saving realities. As such, they trick the team into thinking there's something wrong with Heather's Earth, then strand them all there, taking away the Talus. It doesn't last long, though. The next mission involves fixing a world where... Okay, get this. Wolverine, Magneto, Quicksilver, Scarlet Warlock, and Mesmero were all merged into one being. I didn't think you could get dumber than merging Magneto's and Xavier's minds together to create a supervillain, but there's always a universe out there to prove that, yes, it can get stupider. This new being, Brother Mutant, was never meant to exist and now plans to kill all non-mutants. The bugs have done their probability analysis, as per usual, and all it says is that the solution to this is Wolverine. Their brilliant idea? Create a new group of exiles just made of Wolverines. And keep doing this, despite each time they do so, Brother Mutant just uses mind control on the Wolverines sent in. Realizing how badly botched this whole thing has gone, one of the Wolverines convinces the bugs to bring back the old exiles, who help settle this. With the help of the Wolverines, since one was still needed to fix things. Didn't that Moarte jerk talk about these issues at some point? Wonder what an alternate universe version of him would look like. Oh yeah, Volume 3 DVD coming soon. With the Exiles back to saving worlds, their next mission finally allows us to get back to Sliders-esque shenanigans. Don't get me wrong, after doing their job for so long, especially with stuff like the World Tour and finding out the truth behind everything, it really shook things up, but the entire point of the series was exploring different possible realities, so it's nice to finally get back into the swing of things with that. And they've got a doozy for their return to active duty. In this universe, Earth has already been destroyed by the Silver Surfer. In this reality, Galactus is not the devourer of worlds, but a restorer of worlds, curing planets destroyed by some kind of cosmic blight. The Surfer joined up with Galactus in the hopes he might restore his world, but the Surfer's world was destroyed by its own hand, and Galactus doesn't resurrect any others, so the Surfer sets out to destroy anyone who supported Galactus, since in this reality, he's kind of a dick. The Exiles have to save Galactus, who's mortally wounded and in the care of the Shi'ar, from his renegade herald. Sabretooth is the one who comes up with a solution to stop the Surfer, since everyone else in the Shi'ar just expected pure numbers to do enough against the power cosmic. Instead, he had Galactus take a chance and imbue him with the power. And since Sabretooth is kind of, a killer, he was more than happy to shred the Surfer apart. Still, he happily relinquishes the power back to Galactus so he can get back on task. Issue 89 takes a step back from world saving as we see that Thunderbird is no longer brain dead. He's still comatose, but he's dreaming, fighting alongside his group of exiles with a still pregnant Nocturne. Exiles Annual number 1 brings us the end of Tony Bedard's run in the book. Heather observes a reality where the exiles are saving the day. Only problem is, it's the first group of exiles. The original team, including Magnus, Thunderbird, and the others from the start of the book. It turns out Heather's pirated Mojo's broadcasts. They're watching a rerun. What actually happened was that the Grandmaster, a cosmic being obsessed with games and bets, had made a wager on the world of the Exiles' first mission. They screwed him over by helping win the freedom of superpowered beings, but he was intrigued by the Exiles, so he recruited a team of his own based on the originals, hoping it would attract the Exiles to him for another wager. He loses that bet, and the version of the Exiles he formed remain on that Earth to keep it safe.